Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have back with us Judy Carlson, who is a fee-based fiduciary financial planner, and we're going to be talking about investments versus insurance for wealth accumulation. Judy, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Mike.
Hey, so I love your approach to talking about wealth and financial plans and accumulation and all of the things for planning for retirement. One of the things we talked about before we wanted to go a little bit deeper on here is a lot of times people think that there's only one set way, for retirement, I need to do this and have a 401k or do mutual funds or stuff. Well, there's a lot of things that you can talk about in your basket to keep your eggs, watch your eggs in their basket. But one of the things is a really unique way that you approach life insurance. But what I want to do before we jump into that is catch us up a little bit more on some of your background and entrepreneurial journey and tell us a little bit more about your story.
Well, this story dovetails really nicely into why certain types of life insurance are so passionate for me when I'm working with my clients. So about 10 years ago, it was my 21st wedding anniversary. But what makes that day most memorable is what happened 5 days earlier. The kids and I had been visiting some good friends of mine out of state. It was a Sunday afternoon. It was a beautiful day. We had gone to church, had Sunday dinner. All of a sudden, the conversation around the table turned serious. Now, the kids and I had no idea what was coming next, and it completely stunned us and took us by surprise. Here's what they said, Mike. Your mom needs to make a change. We would like her to come and live with us, and we welcome you guys to come too. Stunning. They took us upstairs. They showed us what bedrooms we would live in. And the very next day, we drove home. We packed for a couple of days. We put what would fit in the back of my Honda CR-V, and we drove away. It just happened that was my 21st wedding anniversary. And you know the other thing, Mike? I had 39 cents in my checking account.
Ooh.
Yeah. So we began a new journey, the three of us. We did move in with them. We lived under the poverty line for a few years, so we got our food at the food pantries and we got our clothes at free stores, which I am today so grateful for because I've been in the trenches. I know what it's like to have nothing, but I want to tell you this really cute story. So my son is 6'3" and a big guy, and we'd be in the food pantry and he'd be pushing the cart. And I don't know if you've ever volunteered there, but different people put canned goods in and they put fresh produce in and then they put frozen in. And the gal one day, she looks at me and she looks at Eric and she looks over at her inventory. And instead of taking one pizza, she took 4 pizzas and she said, here, it looks like you're going to need a lot more food than we get you here. So your precious memories, tough times, but we moved 5 times in 4 years, and I landed in a firm here in Denver that taught me a completely new way to work with my clients.
As opposed to the traditional way that you come out of, training with, right? Serve them this.
Exactly. I mean, I had been in the financial services business for 30 years, and all of a sudden, unbelievably, it was cash accumulation, life insurance. And I was stunned. I was like, wait a minute, this is too expensive. Yeah. What do I need to insure against in this time of my life? And yet I studied it, I analyzed it, and I said, whoa, this is something that's really important. And being that I've been a CPA all these years, this is actually in the tax code and has been in the tax code since 1913. And not only that, but the wealthy people in our country have been using this tool for a couple centuries to build wealth and have wealth create wealth and create velocity of money. Who would have thought, right?
Who would have thought? Because I think that when a lot of people hear the word life insurance, they immediately, red flags go up, and they're like, "Oh, well, I don't need it because," or "I've heard this," or "Grandpa told me to not buy whole life for permanent life because," or "Oh, I don't need it because it's only for death benefit." So I think that that's all of these things that's an uphill battle that you have to educate your clients on, and the fact is, it's not a new fangled thing. It's not like, crypto or all these things that you hear about these days. It's something that's been around for hundreds of years. And in fact, banks and large companies put their money in these contracts. So if they're doing it, let's figure out a way for the common person to take advantage of it as well, right?
Right. And that's my favorite type of people to work for, is people just like me who may have come out of hard circumstances. They're not multimillionaires. They just need protection for the hard-earned money. And you mentioned something interesting about, that people think, oh, why do I need a permanent death benefit? Because it's just way too expensive. However, if you use it for a lifetime wealth strategy, it's not only for the death benefit, it's for all of the living benefits that come along with this particular financial tool. So most people don't realize that if you have a properly structured, unique cash accumulation life insurance policy, you're going to get benefits that don't come with any other assets on the investment side of the financial services equation. So things like, once it's in there, it grows tax-free, and it grows for life. You're on the uninterrupted compound growth curve with all that money for the rest of your life. Should you need money for something else, all you simply do is take a loan against the policy. It's a lien against your death benefit, but then you have access to your capital, and it's liquid. You can use it. I got to tell you, had I not learned about these tools back when I did and started putting my money that I did have at the time into these types of contracts, when we fell short and needed money to make a mortgage payment, I had access to it. Otherwise, quite frankly, we would have lost our house if I hadn't had access to the money inside my cash accumulation life insurance policy.
And I think some people, too, just assume things and get confused on, life insurance, and they think of the term life, that, I'm going to get that term life policy of 20 years. And maybe correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's similar to comparing whole life to term life as it is comparing renting a home to buying a home. You rent a home, you pay the landlord, and 10 years later, if you move out, he says, "Nice meeting you," and you've got nothing to show for that. Whereas if you live in a home, all the way through, you've been getting some tax benefits for writing off your mortgage insurance. If and when the value increases equity-wise, you can take advantage of that. As opposed to like that term life policy, 10 years later, when you stop paying on it and it goes away, you have nothing. Whereas a properly structured whole life policy is giving you benefits all the way through, right?
It is. Yeah, it's interesting because less than 1% of term policies ever pay a death claim, but the insurance company has collected all your premiums.
Yeah.
And if you were to have an unexpected loss early, it is beneficial, but if you can take that money instead and build a permanent policy, because a couple of the other things is you can make use of all the money inside that contract during your accumulation years. And then when you start your decumulation years, you can turn around and use that exact same policy for tax-free wealth distribution.
Yeah.
That does not go on your 1040. So when you're retired, you'd end up not going down that spiraling downward tax cycle that so many of today's retirees are in and didn't know that was coming.
Yeah. Because, you ask the question about, well, do you think taxes are going to go up in the next 5 to 10 years? And many people would say, sure. Well, then when you get ready to retire, however many years that is, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, whatever. Well, why do you think you're going to be in a different tax bracket? Maybe you'll be in a different tax bracket because you're not making as much as you used to make in the corporate world, but the tax rate might still be the same, if not worse. So it kind of is that little balancing act that maybe people don't understand, right? And if you've got a vehicle that can kind of soften that blow, that's a pretty huge opportunity.
Right, and the way we evaluate the value of that tax-exempt income during retirement is we do a tax equivalent calculation. We say, so if you're going to get $30,000 or $40,000 tax-free per year as distributions from your cash accumulation life insurance policy, what would you need on the investment side of the equation to even equal that when you take into consideration a modest or conservative tax rate? And then the safe withdrawal rate. I mean, most people would have to earn 15 to 18% on their money in an investment account just to equal the distributions coming out of one of these kinds of contracts.
Yeah, that's a really big point people need to keep in mind. It's similar to, if you gross X number of dollars out of your paycheck, and then when your kid gets that first job and they bring the check home and they're like, hold on, how come my amount that I got in my check is so much less than what they told me? Well, look at that line item and taxes and taxes and taxes. So I think that having that a number or that calculation in your mind is a huge piece. Let's talk a little bit more about some of the other living benefits of this type of really it's safe money or managed risk, because you're putting money in now. It has a death benefit, good, so that box gets checked. But what are some of the other benefits that you can take advantage of with that flexible liquidity now?
Well, it's a collateral asset, and people who invest in real estate and other types of things surely understand leverage and collateral, because this is exactly like that. You don't have to go to the bank to get a loan. You've got the collateral sitting in your own contract that you can take, that you can leverage. The other thing is, by the time you get to retirement, you can take tax-free withdrawals. Now, there's other certain kinds of contracts that come with they're called living benefits, but for instance, if you were to get a critical illness like cancer and you had excessive medical bills that weren't covered, you can actually take a portion of your death benefit to help you pay all those bills and while you're recovering from the cancer, and then you may go on with life for another 20 years. There's very few contracts that will actually advance a portion of your death benefit for an illness that you have that you recover from. Most of the contracts have an option where you can accelerate a portion of your death benefit, but a doctor has to validate that you're in the last 12 months of life. So that is another huge living benefit that comes along with certain strategically designed contracts.
Yeah, and I think that in my mind, the clarification there is, when I'm hearing cash value, that means I'm dumping money into this contract. So, of course, I should be able to reaccess that. But then we're talking about, in this scenario, the death benefit side of things. So when it's set up, you're saying, hey, I'm not at that point yet where I need to cash in on the death benefit side, but I need to take a little bit of money in advance of it, kind of like asking the boss for an advance on your paycheck. Right. You got to pay it back, but at least it's there for you to take that advance on. So that's dipping into the death benefit side of things early, as opposed to reaccessing the cash you put in.
Right. So much flexibility. You mentioned something that brought something to mind. There's actually, I've just been learning about this in the past year. There's a new kid on the block that really can jumpstart your retirement. And when you mentioned home, and how you leverage and get a mortgage on a home to live in a bigger home, that's exactly what you can do with this particular type of cash accumulation life insurance. So let's just say you have $125,000 growing for your retirement, and that's going to, if you use a growth factor, grow out to a certain amount. Well, this particular type of a contract, actually the bank will help you increase the amount of money growing for retirement. So instead of $125,000, you could have up to $500,000 growing for retirement. And imagine if you have $500,000 growing for retirement, how much more income you're going to have. In fact, it's 60 to 100% more income in retirement than even traditional cash accumulation life insurance policies. So there's constantly these, new tools that are even better and bigger and stronger. So let's say you did have $125,000, you can fully fund your retirement plan with $25,000 per year for 5 years. compared to what it takes some people to get to $1 million, and then find out that they're going to have to live on, $30,000 or $25,000 a year when they're a millionaire.
Now, when I hear that, that's unique and raises curiosity questions. But one of the first questions that comes to my mind would be, well, that sounds fine and good, but A, where's the catch? And B, does that increase risk factors?
It does not increase risk factors any more than a normal cash accumulation life insurance policy would. And insurance companies, it's an insurance company-based product, are under so much federal regulation in what they can invest our money into. It's far safer than even putting your money in a bank.
Well, that's a good point, is because you're putting money into this type of vehicle, there's limitations on how much risk that they're able to even offer.
You're right. Yeah, it's not like having your money in an investment account.
It's not like the wild, wild west of cryptocurrency or whatever you want to think of out there, where it's like poof, it could be gone.
Right. Another quick aside on that is that it's a highly favored strategy for recruiting, rewarding, and retaining highly skilled and highly compensated employees. Nobody's ever thought, I offer them a 401k, and then if they're highly skilled and highly compensated, I offer them a deferred comp. Well, all of those are IRS tax-deferred plans that are in the hands of these retirees on down the road, whereas this is a contract. It's off the radar screen of the IRS, and it's actually going to provide the benefits that it says it's going to provide without worrying about what the tax rates are going to be, what market volatility is, what sequence of returns might be, and all of those other things. In addition, comes along with all those other benefits you and I have been talking about.
I just love when you can have all of these uses for something that's been known for decades. Hundreds of years, like for instance, you were talking about, using the cash accumulation to borrow against it so that you can do certain things like, I need to send my kid to college or buy a car. You can do that. And that's wonderful. But so many times people just think of this is a life insurance policy, which means it pays out when I die, so I need it for that. That's like, the picture in your mind when you see the tip of the iceberg. It's like, that's just a little tiny tip above the line, but the huge iceberg is down below. And that's what we're talking about here is, all of the benefits you can access while you're alive. And then, like that last point you mentioned there, and maybe we go deeper on another time, is, boy, how can you attract top employees? Mm-hmm. Well, we've got a great environment. We pay well. We've got good benefits. And that's what your competitors, that's what the other companies they're analyzing are saying. What else? And so having something like this where you can dive in and show not only do we provide, great benefits and great 401k, but we've got a unique thing we've got a unique thing where you get. And I think that's a really huge opportunity here. And so many times people don't realize what's out there for them. They just think stocks, bonds, mutual funds. Right. But the thing that catches my attention too is that kind of amplification of the leverage. So, I know we don't want to get into detail on that because it's, that's for meet one-on-one and show me some details. But I just really like, if I'm going to put $1 in to something, I want to have it working as if it was more than that $1. I want to get a lot of that momentum and that leverage. And that's very similar to buying a house. Most people don't buy a $500,000 house with cash. Most people buy it with 10, 20% down and borrow the rest, and they're living in that $500,000 house, having all the advantages of living in a $500,000 house, but they only are in it for a very small amount out of their pocket, and they're paying along the way.
Right. Yeah. The neat thing, too, for employers is these are not under ERISA tax code guidelines. So it comes with a lot more benefits than those that have to be under ERISA guidelines. And the employer can match whatever the employer desires to match. Nothing, a lot, and the employee can put in whatever they want to so that they've got some contributions going in. There's a lot more flexibility because it's not tied to yet another IRS government-sponsored savings plan.
Yeah. like compensation. Like we can only pay full-time employees up to this amount, and then, oh, sorry, we can't pay that, or it's not in the budget, or it's not. Well, in reality, if this is going to fly under that radar legally and ethically and morally, then it's another benefit you can provide, but giving you that flexibility as an employer to say, yeah, but when you work with us, let me show you what we provide you.
Right. Absolutely.
Really amazing. Well, listen, Judy, I think that we've talked about a few of these little, light bulb moments here within even just this talk. So if someone is interested in learning a little bit more about how this could potentially benefit them, what's the best way that they can reach out and connect with you?
Right. So my website's pretty simple. It's judycarlson.com. I have lots of good information on there. My teammates, I'm running master classes regularly. There's a place to schedule a meeting with me. I do all complimentary meetings. You can just get a little tip of the iceberg, or we can dive into some of what you've got going on. So, love to talk with clients, love to help them, move forward, at least in an area of their lives that they're struggling in.
Spectacular. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll make sure that we've got your website hot linked up for the show notes at judycarlson.com. Thank you so much for coming on, Judy.
Thanks so much, Mike.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.